Hi, and welcome to week 6 of the 6-week self-improvement series. And today we're going to be talking about getting rid of negative habits. I'm sure we can all kind of relate to that in some way. So what is a habit? Well, a habit is a sort of form of behavior, a routine of behavior that is often subconscious. It's something that we do on a regular basis and is often done subconsciously, I suppose we'd say. So the saying, old habits die hard, it might be true, but it doesn't mean that we can't change our habits. So basically every time we think or feel or do something, we effectively strengthen these neural pathways in the brain, and it's by repetition and practice that these neural pathways become stronger and stronger in the brain, and that's basically how the habit is formed. So habit is really a well-traveled pathway in our brain that we've repeated over and over and over again, so it's become automatic. So many of us might have experienced habits that we want to get rid of. So there are good habits and bad habits, and there's good habits that we do, and we wash our face and brush our teeth every day and maintain our exercise regime and routine, and they're all good habits. But obviously there are other habits that are detrimental to our health and even to our relationships. So again, it's something that we practice. It's become routine. It's done nearly automatically. So let's just take an example of a negative habit. I've worked with clients who want to give up cigarettes, so that's a good example of a negative habit. So when a smoker automatically, for example, lights up after a nice meal or after a cup of coffee, that becomes their pattern, that becomes their habit, and these patterns of behavior become sort of entrenched in the brain, and these neural pathways become stronger and stronger the longer the habit has been practiced or the behavior has been practiced. And so what happens in the brain is whenever they make the association with the smoking and the nice meal, then dopamine is released, a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which is a reward, seen as a reward in the brain, is released. This dopamine is released, and the smoker makes the association with nice meal and then light up, and basically that becomes their pattern. And if the cigarette is taken away or they can't have one, so they've been on a long haul flight and they can't have a cigarette, then anxiety sets in. So that's where the habit has become very, very ingrained in the brain and can be difficult to undo. So the brain is very good at making these associations, whether it be eating a piece of chocolate cake, for example. Then again, dopamine is released. It's the reward part of the brain. It lights up, and another part of the brain called the amygdala makes the association with, oh, that piece of chocolate cake made me feel good. Okay, so the brain is triggered to remember smells and sights of places and things that make you feel good. So we want to repeat that behavior, whether it's a cigarette or eating the chocolate cake. So we make these associations in the brain, and the more often we do this, the stronger that becomes, and that can become a craving after a while. Other negative habits might be how we respond to situations, and in real terms we know that people who respond to stress are stimulated the same way over a long period of time. Again, this builds up their neural pathways in the brain, and that becomes their automatic response to stress, for example. So we can have negative patterns of behavior in all sorts of ways. So we often know that some people are habitually angry, for example. That's because they've practiced the response of anger to different situations over a long period of time, and that just becomes their pattern. So what fires together wires together. So in other words, if we fire off these neurons in the brain repeatedly, they will wire together, make the connections very, very strong in the brain, and that's really what habits are. But neuroplasticity, neuron being the brain, and plasticity means it's changeable. It means that we can change these patterns. It is possible to rewire the brain. And the first thing we need to do is in order to rewire the brain is to recognize that you've got a pattern or a behavior that you want to change, a habit that you want to change. So for example, if you're craving this piece of chocolate cake, before you make the decision to actually put that into your mouth, ask yourself, what is going on? What's the thought process in my head that's making me crave this piece of chocolate? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Am I bored? So the first thing to do is obviously stop the behavior. We can't change the negative behavior until we actually stop the behavior. And the best thing to do is to really divert your attention away from whatever it is that you think you're craving, whether it's barbecue food or a glass of wine or chocolate cake or a cigarette, whatever that might be for you. So you need to stop the behavior and replace it with healthier habits. So have something in mind that's going to be replacing the habit that you want to get rid of. You have to replace it with something. And basically what happens is the longer that you go without the thing it is, whether it's the cigarette, these neurons in the brain become weakened. So the longer you go, they become weakened and they will not fire together, which means they won't wire together. So they become weakened over time. So that, in a sense, is essentially how you would get rid of a negative habit. You just need to replace it with something different that will give you the same dopamine rush in the brain. So replacing with a healthier habit. Plan what that might be for you. So if somebody's giving up cigarettes, they need to think about, what will I do whenever I get that craving? How will I break that association with having the cigarette after my meal? What will I do instead? A lot of people maybe chew gum or that kind of thing, or do something. So before you actually carry out the behavior again that you're trying to get rid of, you need to recognize what's happening and make that decision to not do it. And remember, the longer you can not do the negative habit that you want to get rid of, the weaker it becomes. The neural pathways become weaker in the brain, and soon they will die off and they'll be replaced with better patterns of behavior. I hope that has helped. Leave some comments in the comment box and I will see you soon.